Alrighty, so my name is Mary Hannah Schwarza, and if you are watching this recording, it is because you are a student in my Skills for Success course. So this will be week one. Week one is going to be pretty short because we're going to talk mainly about the introduction to the course, what we're going to be learning. We'll briefly jump into some other material, and then we'll go ahead and call it good for today. So like I said, first and foremost, my name is Mary Hannah. I have been teaching online and in person for the last about 5 years. I teach French, and then I also teach Skills for Success, which is this course. This course particularly is with in mind the idea that there are skills that are necessary to be successful academically, and that is what we're going to be focusing on in this course. We're going to be doing all sorts of different topics that pertain to academics and how to do academics well. So how to succeed in school 101, basically. This course is mainly with the idea that as you are either going into high school or college, you are able to learn some basic skills that are going to really positively impact your ability to study well, take tests well, take notes well, plan for projects, read for school assignments, and the like. And so we're going to be doing, like I said, a variety of topics. So kind of some nitty gritties here. I always like to start every week with prayer. We'll always start with kind of having the mindset in the right place of starting each time with prayer so that we are able to give glory and honor to the Lord in everything and all things that we do. That's not me saying that you have to necessarily pray with me, but that's just something that I always like to start class with. So what are we going to be learning? Like I said, we're going to be talking about how to learn your best. We're going to talk about how to take good notes, pay attention in lectures, how to prepare a test guide and study for that test, how to take a test well, how to maximize your time so that you have free time, especially if you're going into high school or you're a high school student now and you're going into college soon. Time management skills are going to be really, really important for you. Personal experience. Trust me on that. We're also going to learn different things like how to research for a paper. We are used to having a digital online world, and so it can be really difficult to go through and find the right resources and reputable resources that we can trust. And so we're going to talk one week about how to not only look for resources online, but how to know which resources are the right ones, the accurate ones, the trustworthy ones. We're also going to spend a week talking about how to research in the library. It's kind of a forgotten skill nowadays. I think most people really don't really use libraries anymore, but libraries are really useful places that have knowledge in books. And so we're going to talk one week about that. We're also going to talk about expectations as a student, what professors are going to be asking of you, how to communicate with professors if you have questions, and so many more topics. All of those topics are going to be listed in your syllabus. So in just a second, I'll show you what Google Classroom should look like for you. If you're a registered student with me, you should have received an invitation through Google Classroom to join my class. And that's going to give you access to course recordings, homework assignments, the syllabus, the welcome letter that I've posted, and then also different resources like class notes that I'll be posting every week for you to follow along with. So that's going to be where you're also going to be turning in your homework. If you've never used Google Classroom before, it is super straightforward and very, very easy to follow. Plus it's Google, so if you're not sure how to do something, you can literally, Google it. And it's usually a pretty straightforward process to figure out how to get something done. So some things though that I'm going to expect of you as a student. I'd love it if you would show up on time, especially since I set up my classrooms so that there's a waiting room. And so if you're on time, I can let you in right away. Otherwise, if you're late, I may not notice that you've popped into the waiting room. And you may be sitting there for a couple minutes before I realize that you're still sitting there because you've logged into class late. It's also important that you participate in classes. Part of my grades each week for you guys, every quarter, I give you a participation grade. Participation, I feel like, is really important, especially with the kind of topics we're going to be discussing, because we're going to be talking about how to make those topics your own. And so every week participation is going to look like, answering questions, coming up with ideas of what a topic might look like for you. Let's say we're talking about how to take notes well. Some feedback about maybe how you take notes now, what techniques you use. Maybe you don't use techniques and you just can be honest about that, right? But participation and involvement is a big one. Always make sure you bring something to take notes with. Yes, I will post notes every week, but those are my notes. And so those notes make sense to me, but they may not always make the most sense to you. So if you really want to get the most out of a course, which we're going to talk about how to take good notes. So, don't panic about that. But, one of the great ways that you can get the most out of a course is being able to pull the material from it that that resonate with you, that you feel like is important for you to remember. And so bring paper, bring a notebook, something like that, pen, pencil, writing implement, and something to write it down on. Some weeks you're going to be doing Bible readings. Because this is specifically a Christian course, this go around especially. So we're going to be reading scriptures that are going to be talking about school and the Bible and God. So, and if you have any problems with that, of course, you can reach out to me and let me know. So for each week, you're going to have a homework assignment that's going to be practical application. It's going to relate back to the topic that we talked about. So, for example, let's talk again about that week that we are going to be talking about note taking. I'm going to have you turn in your notes that week. I'm going to have you go back over your notes and use one or two of the techniques that we've talked about to rework your notes and then turn them in. And then I may have you do something at the end and say, hey, I tried this note-taking technique. I don't really like it. I don't think I'll use it. When we talk about test taking, we will potentially have you turn in a little study sheet idea, kind of a template maybe that you've come up with for how you can study well for a test. For our week that we're going to be talking about reading assignments for a college assignment, high school assignment, we're going to be reading a piece that's not going to be long or anything, but then I'm going to have you walk through some of the steps that we've talked about for how to read well with that. And then, when we're talking about researching for a paper, no, I'm not going to have you write an actual paper, but I am going to ask you to go through the steps of finding resources for it, because that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. So full-on practical application for each of these, just giving you the opportunity to give it a try, get some practice in it, with the idea that once you've done it once or twice for homework, then it should become more second nature to you, and you can take those skills and use them in your academics in high school or college. All right, so real fast, let me show you what the classroom looks like. All right, so hopefully you should be able to see my screen, and it should be with the Skills for Success course on Google Classroom. You can see the class code right there, actually. So if you still have not been able to get in, that is the class code that you can enter to get added to the course for this recording, at least this purpose in fall of 2021. Each week, if you go under classwork, you're going to have a homework assignment. So you'll notice that I've already assigned homework this week. All right. And then you're also going to have notes posted each week that I'll make available to you. That'll be under resources. Course recordings is empty right now because this is the first recording, but what my plan is to take the Zoom recordings, post them on YouTube, and then I will have a playlist of each week. And the only people that will be able to access that will be folks who have the link. So if you can't get into the Google Classroom, then you're not going to be able to get to the links, because that'll be the only way you'll have access to those links. It'll be an on-posted playlist. And then finally, down at the bottom here, you have course documents. You've got your syllabus and your welcome letter for Skills for Success. Yours is going to look a tad bit different than mine. If you're wanting to look at your grade for an assignment, for example, you're going to have to pull up that particular week's assignment and see what your grade is back from it. There's no full-on grade book. I really wish Google Classroom had that option, but well, there you go. And then as far as turning in homework assignments, again, looks a little different for me, but if you select that week's homework and you click View Assignment, it will allow you to turn in assignments. It will have an option that says Add Attachment, and that's what you're going to use as a student. Again, mine does not show that because I am a teacher, not the student. So that's just a little bit of what that's going to look like for you. And there you go. That's kind of the basic setup. If you ever have any questions for me, my email is everywhere. I make sure that my email is everywhere available for you. If you're still not sure where it is mhteachesfrench@gmail.com. And I'll just put it in the chat. So you should be able to pull that up as you view this recording. But that option is going to be for you to reach out to me, ask any questions. You can also make comments on Google Classroom as well about assignments to find out, more info if you need it. Alrighty. So real fast then, as we're jumping into this year real quickly, we're going to talk briefly about what the Bible says about school. And obviously this is a recording, so you can't give me your actual feedback, but I would ask you to take a second to kind of ponder, what do you think God has to say about school? Have you ever pondered that? Have you ever thought about what God might have to say about school? I've done some research, and I would say that the Lord has a lot to say about school, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to give you a couple of Bible verses here that I feel like really line up with how the Lord feels about academics. So let me share my screen with the whiteboard, and then hopefully you should be able to see this. So some Bible verses that the Lord uses to give us an idea about school, etc. So one of my favorites, I'm pulling it up here on my phone, it's just next to my computer here, is Ecclesiastes 3:1. All right. I'm not going to type the whole thing up for you, but Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "There is an appointed time for everything, and there is a time for every event under heaven." So your version may read a little differently. I would really encourage you, if I mention a Bible verse in class, go look it up in your version, your translation, and go have a look at it yourself. Look and read the context and the like, right? So as far as this, how do you feel like this relates to school? And of course, you can't give me actual feedback, but, hopefully you can kind of ponder that. For me personally, I feel like that one relates to the fact that we have seasons of life. And so for right now, y'all's season of life is that you are in school. And so you are at an appointed time where you are doing academics, as it were, the big fancy word for it, right? Now, another verse that I really like is 1 Corinthians. Is it 1 Corinthians 10:31 that I'm looking for here? Let me look it up here real fast. Takes me a second. All right. So yeah, it is 1 Corinthians 10:31. 1 Corinthians 10:31. All right, again, your translation may read a little differently, but mine says, "Whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." So again, pause for a second and ponder that. How does that relate to school? How do we feel like this verse, when it says, "Whatever you do, do all to the glory of God," how does that relate to our time spent in school? Now, for me personally, I translate that to mean that whatever I do, I am supposed to be doing it for the glory of God, which includes school, which means that as you'll get to know me more, you know that I am in college actually right now. I am getting a degree. And so right now, there are plenty of times that I would prefer to turn in an assignment quickly and just move on. But if I'm doing all things to the glory of God, that means that I have to kind of pause in that attitude and I have to actually put in the good work, because I wouldn't want to hand Jesus a half-done assignment. I just wouldn't. And so if I wouldn't do that to Jesus's face, then, I have to ponder the fact that whatever I'm doing all to the glory of God. And so that means that I need to turn in assignments well. There's a whole lot of Bible verses, and then there will be a list actually on the notes that are available this week. I'll kind of try to pull up one more here real fast. Let me find it. There we go. 3, 2. All right. Yeah. So this is a little bit different, but kind of along the same vein as 1 Corinthians. So this is going to be Colossians 3:23, which again, your translation may look a little different, but it states, "Whatever you do, do your work heartily, as for the Lord, rather than from men." And then I'll even take it even further from verse 23. You keep going. Verse 24 says, "Knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Christ whom you serve." So obviously, with respects to school, if you're homeschooled, then your authority figure is your parents in your school life. But this verse takes it a step further and says, hey, guess what? In whatever you do, you are serving the Lord. And so, yes, well, you might have to turn in those assignments because your mom told you to. You are also serving the Lord Jesus Christ while you are at it. And so, again, if we would not bring something half finished to the Lord and expect him to be proud, or expect to be proud as we handed it to him, if we would not be proud, if we'd be a little concerned about what he might think about a certain assignment, then we need to kind of rethink our attitude about school. Like I said, there's a lot more Bible verses that you can go through systematically and find that can relate to school and academics. You've got verses about obeying authority figures in your life. That kind of pertains to school too, because, right, you have your parents or some other teacher in your life who is giving you assignments and telling you have to do them. They're an authority figure. You're supposed to respect them, right? So real fast though, because I don't have time to go through every single Bible verse like that, what are some things that we can learn from these verses? Well, let me go ahead and just share with you my screen with my notes. Here we go. All right. We're just going to do this because this is a little easier than me typing everything up. These are the notes that are available for you, actually. What can we learn from these verses? Again, you'll notice there's an entire list that I've made available for you. A couple of things that we can take from these Bible verses, and I would encourage you to go read the rest of them. But the 3 specifically that we talked about, God cares about education. And God wants you to give it your best. If you're working to serve the Lord and not men, if you're running with the horses and not with men, then you're going to be doing far better work because you are aiming to please the Lord. You have the idea of giving no offense. And I think there's a verse in Peter that's listed here, or maybe it's the other Colossians verse. Especially in light of however it is you're being schooled, you are an example to others of who Christ is, right? If you're a Christian. And so part of doing school well is actually your opportunity to show others who Christ is through regular, good, steady work. God wants your education to be godly because education is a way for him to train you up in what you need to know so that you can serve him as an adult. if you really love biology, there's probably a good reason why you like biology. And it could very well be that the Lord plans for you to be a doctor. And so you want to give your academics your best because you just never know how the Lord is going to use them. Me personally, I loved history. Loved history. Paid a lot of attention to history. I actually went to school originally to be in the medical field, and then ended up changing my degree to be a history education major because of how the Lord led me in my life. And you know what? All that time I spent studying history actually paid off exceptionally well because I was 2, 3 years out of academics and hadn't studied a history book in forever. But I was able to jump right back in because I had studied so much of it in high school. So you just never know. An education, particularly a Christian education, if you can have it, keeps you from being fooled by false teachings. Your ability to learn to think and reason logically allows you to make educated and wise decisions. It also helps you to grow knowledgeable and wise, which is something that we see held to a high standard in Proverbs. There are a lot of verses in Proverbs about how wisdom is based originally in the fear of the Lord, but is also something to be sought for. Wise men are held to great esteem. There's a lot of other things we can take from this. But then the last one that I'll point out is that you're an example to everybody. So your work should always be your very best. Because especially if you're a Christian, you are an example to the world of what Christ looks like. And you might think to yourself, well, gee, I'm just in middle school, or gee, I'm just in high school. How much of an example am I? If you are a Christian, it doesn't matter how old you are. Every single day you have the chance to show Christ to the world. So that's not something. You have Timothy, who was told by Paul to not let anybody look down on you because you're young. Just because you're in middle school or high school does not mean that you are not an example of Christ to others. So that's about the basics of what we'll go through this first week. God in school is an important concept to set the basis for what we're going to be going through for the rest of our time together this semester. And so as we're parting ways and I'm finishing up this recording, I would ask you to ponder what else do these verses say about God in school. Take it some time to go back over and read some of those verses. And then homework this week is going to be picking 3 of these verses or finding 3 of your own. That's an option too. Write a quick paragraph about what those verses say to you about God and school. I'm going to add that to the end to make that a little more clear for you. Take those 3 verses, write a quick paragraph about what each of those verses say. So no, I don't want you to write 3 paragraphs. This is 1 paragraph total about all of these verses. So call it 2 to 3 sentences about each verse. Not 203, I don't know why I did that. 2 to 3 sentences about each verse. And so that paragraph should be tops 9 sentences. Not a long paragraph at all now, is it? If you want to go more in depth, feel free, but you don't have to. All right, so there we have it. I'm gonna stop sharing here. Super excited to have you in my course. Really looking forward to being able to walk the next semester with you, try out some concepts and skills for success, and get to know you better and help you do school better and enjoy it more because of that. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in person next week.